I'd like to tell you Beethoven's story now, his biography. Beethoven's dates are 1770 to 1827. Now, play with that. 1770 is just, the American Revolution is just starting. Through 1827, the revolutions are over. We are a free country. Europe is now in turmoil. The French Revolution has come and gone. Joseph Smith has come and gone. 1827, 1830, there comes the church. So the world is in turmoil. Beethoven is born right smack in the middle of this. We don't know a lot about Beethoven until he's a teenager. At 17, he went to play for Mozart in Vienna. And Mozart heard him and said, keep an eye on him. Someday he'll make a noise in the world. Little did he know. So Beethoven grows up this way. He's still under the patronage system, but boy, is he surrounded by revolutions and all the stuff that's going on. And he knows that this is what's going to happen. And he is one of the vanguards, one of the leaders in the musical world of the notion of the rights of the common man, that we no longer have this separation between the high end and the low end, between the aristocracy. Everybody is now the same. I mean, in France, as you know, the French in the revolution there make a new word called citizen. Citizen means everybody. We're on an equal plane. There is nobody who is a baron, a duke, a duchess, a marquis. We are now people, and there's no title that goes with people, with citizen. It's just that you're a member of this country. Beethoven loved that notion, was really excited about it. He went out of his way to force himself upon the aristocracy. He walked in the wrong door when he went to a concert. He went in the door that was reserved for the high end. He walked in and he says, I'm as high as you are. What's wrong with this? He made him think, and it bothered a lot of people, obviously. What do you do with somebody who's this pushy, this arrogant, this kind of stuck on himself? But Beethoven was. I got to read you this quote. In one very famous account with a friend of his where he had to play for a bunch of French officers, and he was disgusted because they weren't paying attention. Well, I'll tell you another sidebar. He was doing another concert like this, and people were talking and jabbering and everything else around him. He finally stood up right in the middle of the piece, slammed down the lid on the piano, and says, I won't play for a bunch of pigs, and walked out the door. That would get your attention. I don't care who you are or what's going on. And when some musician who was lower class calls you a pig, that's Beethoven. Okay, here's what he said. He wrote to a friend of his just after another such blow up, and he says, Prince, you are what you are by an accident of birth. Yeah, I am what I am through my own efforts. There will be thousands of princes in the days to come. There will only be one Beethoven. Now, if somebody wrote that today in the newspaper in a letter to the editor, we'd say the cocky, arrogant, conceited, what kind of a person is that? It's Beethoven. He knew he was good. He started to make money. The musical world is just changing at this time, and we're starting to get audiences. That 1800, right along in there, is where all that starts to hit. But the notion that you and I have of going to a concert, of actually paying money for a ticket, sitting down in a seat and have somebody play for us, that's brand new. That's brand new stuff in Beethoven's day. It's just coming, and he's on the leading edge in the sense that he publishes. He writes music and publishes. He's got 5 or 6 publishers who come to him and say, what have you got? What have you got? We got people who want your piano sonatas or who want some of this. What have you got for me? And he said, I can actually name my price and tell them when I'm going to give it to them, and they pay me. This is unthinkable. This is just the most incredible thing. And so he's on top of the cloud. He couldn't be happier. And he's kind of got his nose in the air. And then here comes the bombshell. He starts to go deaf. What more horrid thing could happen to somebody, primal life, 30s, than to go deaf? I mean, as a musician, to go deaf. That's the worst. And it really hit him hard. A doctor finally told him to go out into the forest, go out into the woods and to a health spa, if you will, and to spend some time out there and think. He thought about it, and he basically came down to 2 decisions. He says, either I can kill myself. I mean, he wrote about it. He seriously contemplated suicide, or I can overcome this and rise to be a better man. And we know what happened. He finally said, this is silly. I'm not going to die. I've got too many things that need to be done before my life is over. And so I'm going to do that, and my happiness will come through my music. This is another little thing that is just coming out at this age as well. Art as a refuge. art as a way to get the happiness that you cannot get any other way. We're just coming into the Industrial Revolution where we're going to have a lot of people moving from the country into the cities. And when they get into the cities, they live in lousy conditions. They have crowded tenements. You're living in one. You're a student. You know what it's all about. It's not the best. It works, but it's not the best. Okay, you've got whole families stuffed into these things, and what they want to do is escape. They want to get away from this somehow or other, to get away from all this. Beethoven's music provides one such venue. It's a way for the average person to say, let me just take a break here for a minute, and you close your eyes and listen to some music and you say, that's good. Now, that was one of the reasons why his music was so good. It's also because it was very emotional. And this is at a time when emotions, once again, have been a no-no prior to this time, and now they're becoming okay. The Romantic Age, which roughly is the start of 1800, I think we're still kind of in it, is based on the emotions. Not on the intellect, on the emotions. It's what feels good that makes you feel good. So, if music elevates you, if music depresses you, if music does whatever it does to you, it's emotional. It's romantic. That's the response. That's Beethoven. And that's where he starts to really make his mark, if you will. He never did make his mark in love life. He never got married. He had a couple of affairs, lousy, always ended in in just a lousy ending. So he dies a grumpy old man in that area, if you will. But he gets his solace. He gets his release. He gets his all of his emotions are poured into his music rather than into his family, his children, his wife, his church, like Bach did, or something like that. He dies famous in 1827, as I told you. Dies from dropsy. That's their word for it. CHF, congestive heart failure, is what we'd call it today. But it just means an accumulation of fluids in the body. You just kind of swell up with water, and you can't, your body can't expel it. You finally get too much, and you die. Death of a great man, a huge impact on the musical world. I can't quit without a couple of other comments on Beethoven. First, his music in the sense of how it changed the way that music was being composed. Music in Beethoven's day is going to take you on a trip. And basically, Beethoven starts with despair, starts with kind of a negative. He can start in a minor key, for that matter. But he always ends in this huge triumph. He is always excited. He's happy. He calls it joy. He says that everything should lead you to this period of joy. That's one of those things that is indicative of his life. It started bad, and he wound up with joy. His hearing, little story on that one. There's a couple of theories about why he went deaf, none of which is provable. This is all just smoke and mirrors, but why not? Number one, it was very common at that time to punish a child by smacking him on the ears. To box the ears is an expression we've all heard. When Beethoven was a young boy, his dad would drag him out of bed in the wee hours of the morning and make him practice for a long time in a cold room, and whenever he'd hit a wrong note, Dad would pop him inside the head. That's one theory. Number two, that kind of the same thing, that if you ever messed up, one of the other things that they do is your elders would grab you by the ear and drag you around wherever it was. School was the typical place where you're being taken by the ear down to see the principal. So that's the second possibility. Third possibility, congenital syphilis. Dad had syphilis. Who gave it to Mom? Who possibly gave it to Beethoven through birth? That's a possibility. Maybe he did, maybe he didn't, we don't know. But Beethoven goes deaf, and because of that, the world's a better place because he poured all of his emotion into his music. Beethoven symphonies, the 9 greatest symphonies ever written. To this day, the 9 greatest ever written. You just say Beethoven, and that's as good as it gets. Yes, we've had symphonies written today. Nobody comes close to that, and certainly not 9. What a man. And did I tell you the one other thing? He was short. He was vertically challenged. Why is it that people are short always have to compensate some other way? Some of the greatest people in history have always been short. The irony here is that Beethoven and Napoleon, whom he hated, were the same size. They were 5'4". Yeah, 5. Now, don't think 6'4" is huge. It's huge for our day. 6'4" is, a tall kid walking around campus. But there are taller. And if you go in the NBA, there's really tall. In Beethoven's time, in Mozart's time, anybody who was 6 feet was giant. The average people were in their fives. Ladies, sorry, but you were really down there. You were the 4'10s, 11s, 5'1". That's a normal size female. So when we say Beethoven was 5'4", he sounds short. He was kind of average to a little bit shorter than average. But he compensated for his physical inadequacy. He wrote great music.